Hi, I am Shivansh, serving as legal intern in LEXIS and Company. Today we will discuss military laws in India. India has its law for governing its army. These laws apply to men and women working in Indian Air Force and other forces as well, which are as follows. Navy Act. Before India accomplished freedom, the naval forces were being represented by the Indian Navy Discipline Act 1934, which was passed as per Segment 66 of the Government of Indian Act 1919. Later on, the Act was replaced by the Naval Forces brought up in India the arrangement of the Naval Discipline Act 1866. Likewise, the UK, the Maritime Discipline Act was adjusted and the Indian Navy Discipline Act 1934 was authorized. Several constitutional changes were made. Because of this, it was felt important to change the enactment identifying with naval forces. Meanwhile, in 1950, the Modified Army Act and Air Force Act were relaxed. It was unrealistic to modify the laws managing the naval forces as the then existing Indian Navy Discipline Act 1934 depends on the corresponding British Act. Second, Army Act. India has various legislation for its military, and one of the most important legislation is the Army Act. This act was enacted in 1950 and it applied to soldiers who are enrolled under the act and to the soldier who belong to the Indian Navy and Indian Reserve Forces. Air Force Act. The Air Force Act was commenced under the Indian Air Force and around the year 1950 and applies to soldiers who are enrolled under this act and to the soldiers who belongs to the Indian Reserve Forces. In India, certain paramilitary forces have laws almost like people who apply to defense services. These include the Border Private Security Power Act, the Coastal Guard Act, the Border Police Act of Indo-Tibet, the Assam Rifles Act. Those acts were replaced by Military Act. The first intention with which the British created military value was to empower discipline in Indians after the Mutiny of 1857. This was the principal objective of the Indian Army Act 1950, the Navy Act of 1957 and the Air Force Act 1950. Thank you. And if there is any doubt, please mention that in the comment section.